Presentation. Hello, this is Paul Hoyt, and welcome to our Office Hours presentation for the day. Our Office Hours is a relaxed, informal, and free mentoring program that I do every Monday at noon Pacific time, although I will be changing that time slot most likely here in the next few weeks or so, and I'll give you plenty of heads up when I do that. This recording is going to be available online along with many of the previous week's recording and the handouts from those recordings, and they're going to be archived in our members area permanently from now on. I've been asked, again, the reasons that I do these office hours presentations, and there are several of them. Number one is that being a successful small business owner is a great experience, but it's really tough. You need the training. Most small business people jump into business without even knowing what the job is and without getting the adequate training that they need in order to ensure their probability of success and to really accelerate their growth. And I want you to get to know me, and when you do, you'll find that I really care and I really do want you to succeed in business. I'm very passionate about that. Our agenda during these presentations are we have an in-depth discussion of a business success principle. I make a few closing remarks, then an invitation to attend next week's session, and some special offers, and then we have open questions and answers. First, I like to get questions that are relevant to the topic of the day, and then we just open it up for as long as we can, just talking about anything and everything about starting and growing your business so that I can help you in whichever way that I can. Today's topic is about being yourself and defining and managing your company culture. I always try to relate the topics back to my key performance areas of business. And I know that you've seen this before, the 7 key performance areas of leadership, marketing, sales, financial management, product development, operations and administration, and customer service or service and delivery. And this particular office hours presentation on defining your company culture is square in the area of leadership. It is one of the most important responsibilities in leadership is defining and managing your company culture. So today we're going to talk about various things with regards to company culture. We'll talk about the importance of the culture. We'll really address what are the different aspects of the company culture and talk a little bit about how you define and how you manage your company culture going forward. First, let's talk about the importance of culture. The most important thing about culture is a well-defined culture can result in having reduced turnover and having a team of like-minded people. So I would like for you to imagine just a minute about the best business that you can possibly imagine, about people who see the world in the way that you see the world, especially when it comes to ethics and integrity and working hours and those sorts of things, not necessarily have exactly your same perspective around the different key performance areas of business, because you want people who are stronger in, say, finance if you're not strong in finance, or you want people who are strong in customer service if you're not strong in that area. But you do want them to be like-minded in many other important ways. And we'll talk about those ways here in a second. When you have a well-defined culture, it really does reduce turnover and improve morale. Because when people know what is expected from them and they feel like the environment is predictable, they feel safer. The formula is that consistency really increases predictability, which means that people feel safer in their environment. If they know what to expect every day and they feel comfortable adhering to and being in concert with the company culture, they're going to stick around longer. They're going to enjoy themselves. You'll have a much better high-performing team. And that because it improves morale. And having a great high-performing team with great morale and great teamwork is really what you want as a small business owner. You want like-minded people in terms of spirit, not in terms of skills and talent, because you want some diversity there. But you do want people to be like-minded when it comes to the way that they treat each other and the values and principles and those. So we'll cover each one of those things here in a second. So I think your company culture is made up of all these things. It's your vision, your values, and your beliefs, your work schedules, your business processes, your dress codes, your meeting management, your performance management, your compensation and benefit programs, your conflict management programs, and the energy signature of your business. We're going to talk about each one of these areas individually here for a few minutes. First, I think the most important thing about your company culture is your vision, and that's the clear statement of the company that you are creating over time, where you are going with your company, and how you want to be seen in the world, in the marketplace, for the company that you are creating. A big part of your company culture is defining that vision and communicating it with everybody on your team so we're all on the same page. The values are the principles of thought and action by which you do everything. Values like integrity, authenticity, punctuality, courtesy, respect, diversity can be things that you value. I think it's important for every business owner to, as a part of their strategic planning process and their annual planning processes, to define and then review and to communicate the values that they hold the most dear, that guide thoughts and guide actions throughout the workday, so you don't have to have near as many rules and procedures in place. If we all agree on the values, we're much less likely to need a tremendous amount of laws and rules and guidelines. And the third aspect of that is your beliefs, your foundational, personal, and spiritual truths that you adhere to. So I've had some businesses, for example, that were heavily religious in one way or the other. And they said right up front that we begin every meeting with a prayer. Or we have, in one case, a client that I had morning and afternoon prayers that were consistent with their Jewish faith. I've had another business that I worked with that was very Muslim in their faith, and they had a practice in their culture was that at the appropriate times during the day that people took a few minutes out and did their prayers, as was consistent with their religion. So you have the opportunity to do that, to define and run your business according to your foundational, personal, and spiritual truths, as long as, and this is a big if, as long as you don't restrict the spiritual viewpoints and religious activities of other people who work with you who may not be inherent to the ones that you have. One of my clients just the other week asked me if they could enforce a vegan culture. Their business is in their home, and they have a standing policy in their environment that they just flat didn't allow meat on the premises. Now, and they wanted to know if they could enforce that, and my answer was, surely you can, as long as you communicate that. That's not a big restriction, that if you bring your lunch to work, and they would have 2 or 3 people that worked with them and came into their home where their office environment actually was as well. You know, it's not a big restriction to say that if you choose to eat meat at lunch, then you go out for lunch. Or if you choose to eat meat, if you decide to bring your lunch in and have it here, that's great, but we just don't allow any meat in the house. They were creating a company culture that was consistent with their spiritual and personal growth beliefs. And you have an opportunity to do that too, especially as the owner of your business and the leader at your business. Another aspect of company culture is the work schedules. You can be rigid or flexible about your work schedules. I have some clients that say that, you have to be there at 8 o'clock every morning at your desk, ready to go to work at 8 o'clock in the morning. Other companies have manufacturing processes so that it's real important that everybody be there at the shift change, because if you're not, then somebody works overtime or some job is not ready to get done, and it really can cost them a lot in the manufacturing process. Or you can have very flexible hours. You can say, we require that people are here in between 10 a.m. and 2 p.m., and we require that you work 8 hours a day, but when you show up and when you go home is largely up to you, as long as you are in the office during our regularly scheduled office hours. And by the way, companies do that so that they can have meetings during those time frames, and they can safely say that most people will be there. Some companies work over the weekends. Some companies work a lot of overtime, paid or unpaid. Some companies work on holidays or vacations, and other companies have a policy that says, hey, we're going to shut down in between New Year's Eve and the day after New Year's, in between Christmas Eve and the day after New Year's. We're going to shut down for 7 or 8 days and don't expect any work to get done at all during those period of time. And other businesses, holidays and vacations hardly exist. A holiday is when you don't work after 3 p.m. And vacations, you're only checking email 3 or 4 times a day. So when you define your work schedules, you are defining a large part of your company culture. And another aspect of that is on-call. How quick of a response time do you anticipate whenever you pick up the phone and call somebody on their cell phone? And do you expect them to respond on Saturdays or Sundays if they're on call? That's all a part of your particular company culture, and companies are all over the map when it comes to that. Another part is the business processes. You can be precise or flexible in the way that you run your businesses. You can have a formal or informal process when it comes to getting things done. and you can run things via checklists and memory. I have general policies in my business where I have very specific checklists, and every week we have, for example, a marketing operations calendar that we use, and I work religiously off of that thing to make sure that I don't forget everything and to make sure the various team members are communicating to each other when they have accomplished things. And by the way, online checklists using the collaboration tools that are out there, like I use Google Documents for a lot of mine and Smartsheets for a lot of mine, are really valuable for having a virtual office environment and really help people not forget the things that they're supposed to do on a daily basis or a weekly basis or a monthly basis, and they really facilitate the communication in between the various team members. Another business process that you might have is quality assurance and quality control. We have a policy, again, at my company that says that no email goes out to the entire database unless it's had some sort of a review, a second pair of eyes to check for typos and check for things that just don't make sense. And we catch a lot of mistakes that way, so that's part of our company culture and might be part of yours as well. Dress code is an interesting part of company culture. You can have a company culture that allows shorts and t-shirts or tennis shoes and thongs, or you can have a company culture that requires hard hats and safety glasses. Some manufacturing and construction environments require those because of OSHA, the Occupational Safety and Health Administration laws, and because of insurance regulations as well. Frankly, if you allow somebody on a construction site and they're not wearing a hard hat and they get hurt in some way, your insurance might not pay or your premiums might not go up if you were not adhering to the letter of the law there. So dress code can be a big part of your culture depending upon whether you have a business casual environment or an environment that's very formal in suits and ties. And I've worked in both of those. I've worked in environments where shorts and t-shirts were okay, and environments where everybody was expected to wear a suit and have a tie every single day, and you were not even allowed to take off your tie anytime during the day. I remember years ago when I worked for EDS, their dress code was such that you were allowed to take off your suit jacket and put it on the back of your chair or hang it up on a hook when you were sitting in your chair in your cubicle. But if you got up to go to the restroom or got up to go to the break room, you had to put back on your suit jacket, which was really strange. But they wanted a culture to where when a client came on board or a customer prospect came there, they would see everybody dressed essentially the same with a white shirt and some sort of a dark suit, and everybody was wearing their suit coats when they walked the halls. Very interesting environment. It served them well, though. You can have casual Fridays, or my favorite is Aloha Fridays, but there are a lot of challenges when it comes to this area of dress code, and some of those challenges have to do with suggestive dress codes or religious preferences or people who are way too casual. I talked about EDS a couple of minutes ago. One of the challenges that EDS had when I was working there was they had some Muslims who were working with them who wanted to wear a turban and have a beard, which was consistent with their religious preference. And it was a big deal for EDS to relax their dress code that would allow people who are of the Muslim faith to wear their turbans and to wear their beards so that they could, so that they wouldn't be in conflict with diversity laws. That was a big deal for them to change their company culture that way. One of the challenges that I've seen in other places is that some people wear a dress that is too suggestive, both men and women. Men that have, their shirts unbuttoned down to their navel, or women that are showing a little bit too much skin, can be a real challenge when it comes to the dress code too. And there's way too casual. What I consider to be way too casual is people, there's a difference in between wearing a nice pair of shorts and a classy t-shirt or short sleeve shirt, and wearing a ragtag, ratty pair of cut-off jean shorts with holes in them and, a real sloppy tank top. There's a huge difference in between casual, business casual, and sloppy. Well, the good news is you get to decide and you get to enforce so that people will have a predictable environment that really suits you and serves your purpose as a business person. Another aspect of company culture is the way that you run meetings. You can run them casually or formally. You can have short meetings or long meetings. You can have standing meetings or sitting meetings. I've had worked with companies that had a policy for, if at all possible, we're going to do a 15-minute meeting and we're going to do them standing meetings, because they realized that that allowed people to be focused and far more productive. It was just part of their culture. And you can have agendas or minutes to those meetings too. Some companies have a formal policy that says that if you're going to have a meeting that has more than 3 people in it, then it's required that the meeting have both an agenda and somebody is designated to be scribe of that meeting and takes minutes of that meetings, and action items or takeaways from those meetings are very clearly defined. I encourage you to be cautious about this. I've had one client who had a company culture that was generally we meet 3 or 4 times a week, and the meetings are an hour long each, and we generally spend the first 5 or 10 minutes in those meetings talking about personal things and issues and doing a little bit of check-in and going around the room and seeing how people were doing and what you do over the weekend and anything you want to bring up or share, as family and as friends with us. And they hired a new CEO who said, we're going to stop that because it's not really serving us from a productivity point of view, and we're going to go to a policy that says that the meetings are no longer than 15 minutes. We simply won't allow any meeting in our environment to be over 15 minutes long. Well, he went way too overboard with that, and it really started driving a lever or a wedge in between the people at the company, because they no longer had the same environment, the same company culture that they had bought into and become very accustomed to over time. Now they were in a very formal, strict environment, essentially a standing meeting of only 15 minutes long, and it did not serve the company well at all. So be cautious when you go to change your meeting management principles too. Another big aspect of company culture is performance management. You can have formal or informal performance management systems in place. You can have set times for evaluations, such as we do formal performance reviews every quarter or every year. We can have set times for raises and promotions, or you can have an informal way around that and say that we give raises and we give promotions as people have earned them and deserved them. And especially, we give bonuses or spot bonuses based upon somebody doing something heroic or really substantial for the business. My suggestion is that when you hire somebody for the first time, as a part of their compensation program, you put them on probation for 90 days, and at the end of 90 days, if everything is going well, that you give them a little boost in performance and let them know that welcome to the team, congratulations, you passed your probationary period, you get a 10% bonus. And factor that into your budgets and your overall compensation plan. It really sets an incentive for them and rewards them for making it through that for those first 90 days. And I'm a big fan of an annual compensation review as well. And so that every year, even though we review your performance on a quarterly basis, at least, if not a monthly basis, every year we talk about the compensation program that you have in place. And speaking about compensation programs, the way that you manage your compensation and benefit programs is a huge part of your company culture. You can decide that you're going to pay minimum wage or top of the wage scale. You can decide that you're going to pay people with salary only or hourly wages only, or if you're going to have a bonus program in place, or if you're going to have a commission programs in place. And if you have commission programs in place, what percentage of that is leveraged? What percentage of the total compensation package is leveraged based upon performance versus how much of that is guaranteed? You can, as a company, also provide cell phones or computers or printers or tablet PCs out to the people who work for you, or you can require them to use their own equipment, and you get to decide whether as part of your compensation or benefit program, whether you reimburse people for their internet connections and for the equipment that they are using on behalf of the company, such as their cell phones. Or you can have no benefits at your company, or you can have incredible benefits. When your company gets to be 50 employees or more, the laws change, by the way, when it comes to health care. But if you have 50 employees or less, or 49 employees or less, then you get a lot of flexibility in deciding whether or not you're covering health care or whether you're doing vision and dental care associated with that. Maybe you have a 401k program in place with a company match. And as a part of benefits, for a lot of companies, they provide, pizza on Fridays or snacks during the week or coffee and soft drinks during the day. Again, that's all part of the compensation program, the benefit program, and your company culture that you get to decide. Another aspect of company culture can be the way that you manage conflicts. You can have formal or informal processes for managing conflicts. My favorite, by the way, process is the one that I teach throughout my trainings. I call it the UCR or the UCD system, which is simply a three-step process that you say, I'm uncomfortable about this, I am concerned that this might happen as a result of this situation, and this is my request for you. Or you say, hey, I'm uncomfortable about this, I'm concerned that this might happen, or this is what I'm going to do. This is my declaration. And the example that I like to give, if somebody is coming in repeatedly late to work, and your company culture is not a flex time culture, that if somebody's working 8 to 5, you expect them to be on the job at their desk at 8 o'clock in the morning, you expect them to be there working on the job until 5 o'clock, then you might have a conversation with somebody that says, hey, I'm uncomfortable that you've been coming in late, and I'm concerned about the message that's sending to other people. And I'm concerned about the message that's sending in terms of your diligence and your adherence to our company policies and practices. So my request to you is that you continue, that you really focus on being here early. And my declaration to you is that if you continue this process of coming in late, then we're going to have to do something about deciding whether or not this is the right place for you to come to work. Really helps having those difficult conversations. And in some cases, they have anger management issues and anger management policies. So if somebody really, really starts getting upset, they have a way of managing that at their company. You can declare a timeout. You can declare taking the afternoon off if somebody really gets out of control in some ways. And you have a formal way of managing conflicts. That can be part of your company culture as well. And in the CEO space environment where I'm a member of, if they have a member of staff who is not adhering to their particular policies and not meeting their commitments, they put them in the middle of a circle, and it's a bit of a process for them to explain to everybody on their team why it is that they chose not to adhere to their commitments. And it's really quite an interesting process for managing conflict and managing somebody that has not lived up to their commitments and their expectations as a member of a high-performing team. This last section here is one that I encourage you to think about too, and that's the overall energy signature of your business, the vibration of your business. Think about whether you want your business to be a relaxed or intense environment, whether you want it to be an informal or formal environment, whether you want it to be a friendly environment, or whether we're a hostile environment, that everybody's a competitor, and by golly, we're all fighting against each other and against the enemy in order to come out on top in some ways. There are some environments like that really spawn a competitive environment internally, that we're all competing. We have just 5% raises going around, and in our group of 8 people, one person's going to get a 3% raise, one person's going to get a 2% raise, and one person's going to get a 1% raise, and the rest of you aren't going to get any raise at all at the end of this quarter. So do your darndest to be the one who gets that raise. We let 10% of our workforce go every year, and we do a ranking system. So you need to be very sure that you're not at the bottom of that scale at the end of the year, or we'll let you go no matter how good you are. That's an intense, very formal, very intense, I think hostile and very competitive situation, which serves some companies very well, but may not serve your company well. And think about whether you're going to be authentic or you're going to be superficial. Are we authentic in the way that we interact with each other? Are we business casual in the way that we dress, or are we very formal in suit and tie and formal business dress, and we put on kind of a superficial air to our meetings and to all of our conversations, or are we going to be more authentic and casual? The big question is, do you want your people who work with you to be part of your family, and do you treat them as if they were family, with the same courtesy and respect, with the same friendliness, or are there strangers? And is this a formal working environment where any second you can expect that it's going to be competitive and even hostile to you? Again, I don't think that there's a right and wrong answer here. I think that the right and wrong answer, or the right answer, is whatever serves your business and whatever serves your passion. And the good news is you get to define and manage the culture however you want. You can use a top-down approach or a bottom-up approach. And there's a couple of really good examples out there. One of the best examples of a bottom-up approach to defining company culture is Zappos. Most of you know the Zappos story. Tony Hsieh has been given a lot of credit, and appropriately so, for managing Zappos with this tremendous growth that they had until the point that they were purchased by Amazon a few years ago for billions of dollars. And he is one powerful, dynamic leader at his company. What a lot of people don't know is that the company cultures of Zappos, the thing that really set them apart was not Tony Hsieh's idea. It came from the people that he chose to work with. They were the ones that defined what the company culture was, and they were the ones that defined the policies under which they were going to manage their company culture. So they had a bottom-up approach to creating a phenomenal company culture at Zappos. I have another client who's in the financial services industry, and because her industry is so heavily regulated, she cannot let her employees define what the company culture is. She has to define the company culture, and hers is a very formal process, a very formal company, and for rightful reasons, by the way. It's because in her industry, it's extremely highly regulated. She has to toe the line on literally every correspondence and every conversation with every single one of her customers and prospects. She has to manage exactly what is said and how it is being said, or she runs the risk of stepping over the line and doing something that a financial advisor is not supposed to do, or making a claim that a financial advisor is not supposed to make. So in her particular case, she has defined the company culture that served her company and has pushed that down into the environment. And the people at her company may get an opportunity to tailor the company culture but not set it. So here's the bottom line. You get to define the company culture that is just right for you using the process, top-down, bottom-up, or hybrid, that is just right for you. And you are the role model for your company culture. So again, if you want people to treat your customers with respect, then you treat them with respect. If you want people to show up on time, then you show up on time. If you want people to rob you, you're blind, then all you have to do is walk out of the office every day with a handful of Post-it notes and paper clips, and people will get the idea that it's okay to essentially borrow or, let's say, utilize company supplies on their own behalf. You are the role model for your company. Find a company culture that serves your passion, that helps you feel good about who you are and the company that you are creating and the people that are working for you, and it will serve you extremely well. Take 100% responsibility for that. Take 100% responsibility for defining your company culture in a way that serves your passion, in a way that serves your vision, in a way that serves your values and your personal and or spiritual beliefs, and you will be able to tap into your passion a lot more. You'll be happier, joyful, more energized, more energetic, more optimistic every day, and I believe strongly that that will roll down to the people who are on your team, and you'll get better results, more productivity, more efficiency, more effectiveness as a result. So here's your homework. Think about your culture in all of these areas that we have defined, and to make that easier for you, I've created a company culture worksheet that will be put up on the website along with the recording of this presentation. Download that and think about all of the areas that you have there. Fill out the worksheet. It's a Word document, so you can type in there whatever you want, and then share it with your team. Call a team meeting. Call an all-hands meeting and say that today we're going to talk about the company culture, and here's the way that it's going to be, or to solicit their feedback and do it in a brainstorming, kind of facilitated, co-creative, collaborative way in order to create your company culture for your business. Focus on the energy signature of your business, the way that you want to be seen internally and externally, and plan your company culture and communicate that with everybody so that you can create the company that you want. Be thinking about the people that you want to have on your team, and then you can attract them and keep them with the appropriate company culture. And we're going to have open questions and answers here in just a minute around this topic, and then for other ones, any other issues that you might have. But first, I want to talk a little bit about a couple other things. First of all, the schedule. I'm really considering rescheduling these calls so they're not in conflict with another business partner that I have. And I'm also thinking about adding an encore presentation. So go to paulssurvey.com. And by the way, thank you for those of you who have already done this. Go to paulssurvey.com or just send me an email and give me some feedback. I think I'm going to change the schedule after the first of the year. So there'll probably be 3 more presentations, maybe 4 more on this particular schedule, and then we'll go to the first of the year schedule. You can join my tribe at Skype. Just go to Paul Hoyt, look me up on Skype, and join my tribe there. And I do interact with my tribe in special ways. All the information is private. And every once in a while, by the way, the Skype gets an extra special discount on some of my programs and packages that I've got. I encourage you to study. Watch the Business Survival Bootcamp program that most of you got free or at a very reduced price when you signed up for this program. Learn about business complexity profiles. Watch some of these other free office hour recordings. I think we're up to number 12 now or so. Yes, this is number 12. So there are 11 other times that I have held forth on a subject of one nature or the other. And I really would encourage you to purchase and study my Beyond Business Survival program. That's the critical small business owner training program, what you need to know when you're a CEO in order to give yourself the best chance of success and the best chance of accelerating your growth. It really will help you avoid a lot of mistakes that can either slow you down or shut you down. I really think the program's worth $10, $20, or $50,000, not just the first time, but every time you go through the entire thing. I provide a wide variety of services. I'm available for group coaching and private one-on-one mentoring, private coaching. Also do strategic plans, business plans, and financial models. My programs start as low as just a couple of $100, so there's nothing that's out of your budget when it comes to working with me. Also available for radio interviews, webinars, teleseminars, and have a very generous affiliate program in place. Our next forum starts a week from yesterday. It's December 8th through the 15th in Lake Las Vegas. I hope to see you there. We don't have a lot of time to get stuff done between now and then, but you'll be able to schedule a private meeting with me if I see you there. And if you don't make the forum, then certainly you're able to pick up the phone and give me a call whenever you want. The new year is almost here. 2013 is almost gone. I want you to think about strategic and annual planning for next year. And this year, for the first time, I'm offering a day-long virtual workshop on Saturday, January the 10th and Saturday, January the 17th to help you plan your 2014. We're going to call this our annual action plan beginning in 2014 so that you can get better results than you would have otherwise if you didn't have a plan for 2014. Your kind words are always appreciated on Facebook, LinkedIn, or Google+, or just send me an email to paul@paulhoyt.com. I love to put your testimonials and your kind words up on my website. That means a lot to me, so if you have some, please share them. And next Monday, our topic is on joint ventures, on working together, defining and managing joint ventures. I've talked to lots of clients about how do I do this? How do I work with a business partner? How do we get started in designing, implementing, and managing our joint venture relationship? And that's what we're going to be talking about next week. Let me know what topics that you would like for me to address on future office hours at paulsurvey.com, and of course any comments that you have about rescheduling. Watch the Business Survival Bootcamp. In the meantime, do your homework by defining your company culture and sharing that with your team. So now let's go to open questions and answers. Again, comments and questions that you might have on the topic of the day, and any other issues about starting and growing a business that you can. And I'm going to leave my contact information up on the screen too. So I'm going to ask my able assistant here, Kim. Kim, did we have any questions with regards to today's presentation?
Of course, Paul, we always have questions. Everybody loves to get your answers. So I'm going to start with Richard. Richard's first question was, Paul, can you take a moment to contrast productive corporate culture with Kool-Aid? And can you also discuss how corporate culture can be derailed by excessive pandering to A players and ignoring the poor performance of D players? Or is that too much to ask in one question?
Well, let's start with the first question. Tell me what the first question was again.
It was, can you take a moment to contrast productive corporate culture with Kool-Aid?
Yeah. Well, and by Kool-Aid, I mean like drinking the company Kool-Aid and buying into everything that the company has to say. I think it's real productive to allow open dissent or open disagreement within your culture. I think a part of a company culture that I would certainly have is that, hey, if you disagree with something, then speak up. Raise your hand. Have a kind of an open office policy that says that if anybody thinks that we're doing things in a way that's not in our long-term best interest or is inconsistent with our overall values and principles that we've established and communicated to you, then please raise your hand. When you start drinking the Kool-Aid, that means that a culture has come to the point to where they're not encouraging that dissent. and they're not encouraging that alternative perspective. There's a way of delicately managing that, and you can have anonymous suggestion boxes, or you can have an open door policy so that people can come in and offer that dissent. If that's important to you as a company culture, then it's important for you to honor that when somebody speaks up and says, I don't think that's going to work, or I think that we're a little bit out of integrity here. To honor those people who have the courage to speak up and question whether or not things are going the way that they should, and have an honest, open opportunity or idea for improvement. One of my favorite aspects of doing that is say that we really encourage you to speak up whenever you see a problem, and our only request is that whenever you do that, if at all possible, also come up with a solution, so that not only are you identifying the problem and speaking to that problem, but you're coming up with a solution to that problem at the same time. And one quick final comment on that is one of my favorite people, David Corbin, has a great book called Illuminate, which is, identifying the negative, and I don't know what the subtitle of the book is, but the gist of the book is how important it is to identify what's not working well and get that out in the middle of the room. It's the elephant in the middle of the room that nobody talks about, so that we can talk about these things. So sometime when you do your quarterly meetings or annual meetings, a very good question to ask your team is, what is it that we're not talking about that everybody thinks that we ought to talk about, but people are afraid to bring up because they're afraid of getting shot down for having noticed it? And again, that really starts with the leaders of the company, whether or not they're open to having those sorts of suggestions for improvement, or whether they, are, let's say, less than humble people. I know I say this a lot, but humility is one of the most important lessons that I've learned in my lifetime. And humility always means that you recognize that there's constantly areas for improvement, not only in your business, but in your personal life too. So I encourage you to have that humble attitude at your company, so that you don't get that, pandering to the A players, I think was the second part of that, and that suppression of any sort of ideas for improvement, or suppression of any sort of dissent. So I'm not sure if I answered both of those questions or not. I'll shoot that back over to Kim and see whether or not she wants to move on or restate the second question there.
Actually, I think that was perfect. One of the, you asked what the subtitle was. It was Harnessing the Positive Power of Negative Thinking.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Thank you, David,
No problem.
for that book. Go ahead.
It's a great book.
Next question.
All right. So when a company is struggling with turnover, how might culture play a part in that? Or how could it be corrected?
I think the exit interview when people are struggling with turnover is a really big thing to do. Ask yourself, or even have a third party do the exit interview. It can be really helpful. Not the supervisor, or sometimes the president of the company may ask somebody that's 2 or 3 levels down on the management chain to talk to them about why they decided to leave the company. It's really that decision is why they decided to leave. Some people decide to leave because the compensation program just wasn't what they were looking for, or some people leave the company just because they got a tremendous opportunity elsewhere. They got an opportunity for a 25 or a 50% raise doing something else, or an opportunity to be closer to home so they don't have to commute 3 hours a day. There are some really good reasons for quality people moving on, because it serves them and their family in a way that you can't serve them. Part of my culture is to bless them and encourage them and honor them for making a decision that's right for them and their family, as opposed to trying to make them feel bad about doing something that they know that's right for them in the long term. So I think that exit interview can tell you a lot about what aspects of your company culture may need improvement when somebody moves on. If somebody's moving on because they just don't get along with their boss, or because there's a lot of temper tantrums in the environment and it's far too stressful, maybe that's something that you want to address, especially if you start seeing a repeated pattern of that we're losing good people because our environment is too competitive and hostile and too intense. You might make some really good plans to change that company culture in some way. So
that's wonderful.
That's it. Next question, Kim.
Okay, so what would be considered unreasonable as a company culture?
I think that depends upon you, and it depends on your particular company culture. One of my good friends, Jim Ward, is on the call. He was a Marine in Vietnam. The company culture of a Marine in Vietnam is a heck of a lot different than a company culture in a business like mine or a coaching business today. What was appropriate as a Marine, on the front lines is, a very strict, very formal. We honor the people who are on the field. You don't take no shit when somebody says take that hill. You have to go do that. It's a very theory X, autocratic, take orders, do what you're told and do it now kind of environment, because that's what's required in order to meet the mission objectives and for people to survive. It's a heck of a lot different than an artistic environment where people are creating landscapes and sunflower pictures all day long. So that it's really wide open. You decide what serves you best as an individual, which allows you to connect with your passion and your principles and lets you work with the team that you want to work with, and what's right for the overall mission and objectives of the particular company.
That's perfect. I love that answer. Thank you, Paul. So Richard has another question. He said, what is your observation about cultures that support training or education and those that ignore or despise it? Does it make a difference?
Yeah, I think it makes a huge difference. Thank you for that. Thank you for that question. I'm a real big fan of ongoing lifetime education. Working every day to improve your professional skills and your soft skills, your relationship skills, and of course on personal growth as well. So, it means everything to me to know more today than I knew yesterday. And believe me, today as a business consultant, 12 years after I first hung out my shingle as a business consultant, I'm enormously better today than I was 12 years ago, and I had a lot of confidence in myself when I started 12 years ago. So I'm a big believer of lifetime of education and a company culture that supports that. When I was working in information technology business, which by the way is where I met Richard many years ago, there were company policies in place that says that every one of the members of our technical staff gets to go to at least one training conference every year, and they had a budget allocated of, for between $3,000 and $5,000 to pay for the training program and to pay for the travel expenses around going to the training program for every single person at their company, because they knew that people who are technically oriented and were professionals in a particular area, they really valued gaining new career skills over time. And a big part of the benefit program of working for that company was not just the salary and the benefit programs with the health care that you got, but it was the benefit of furthering your career through training programs and through getting to work on leading edge technology. So I think that can be a huge part of your company culture, is that we want you to grow in your professionalism every single day and every single year, and we'll offer all kinds of training programs available to you. Some of them free and on our website, and you're encouraged to cross-train with other members. You're encouraged to learn new languages, to get cross-trained on another piece of equipment if you're in a manufacturing or construction environment, to further your career. I think that attracts the best and brightest people and keeps them for as long as you're going to keep them. And again, as I mentioned earlier, I don't think it's a bad thing at all if somebody graduates from your business to take an opportunity that's better for them and their family than you're able to offer them at your business. I think that you want a culture where really bright people are coming on board and they're learning a lot and staying with you and contributing a lot for as long as they stay with you, and then we honor them and respect them when they move on and take that next step in your career. Who knows? Maybe they'll decide to be president of their own business, and you'll be able to work with them as an affiliate partner or as a joint venture partner, as opposed to them working with you in the context of your particular business. I'm a big fan of getting the best and the brightest people that you can and supporting them, encouraging them as best you can, and a big part of that is helping them learn and grow in their career.
Yeah, I agree with you, Paul. I think that's brilliant. So the next question is, Audrey wants to know, how is culture different from than policies? It sounded like, from what you were saying, that you were just describing company policies. How are they different than the culture?
I think policies is, the formal mechanism. Typically policies are written down, standards of practice, business processes, policies and guidelines with the way that we deal with things like, sexual harassment or, diversity or abuse in the workplace. To me, all of those things are policies. The culture is much more than that to me. To me, the culture is like the energy signature of your business. It's the feeling that people get when they come to work every day. It's the feeling that your customers and your prospects get when they come to your office environment and come into contact with your company. They will get that what I'm calling the energy signature of your business. Is it friendly? Is it formal? Is it informal? Is it casual? Is it precise? Is it quality oriented? Is it tense? Do people walk around with a scowl on their face, or generally are people seem to be happy and optimistic and lively when they work there? So that's the difference to me. Company policies and procedures to me are a subset and a part of your overall company culture. Next.
Okay, that was a great description. Thank you. Yeah. All right. So, what is the best way to get everyone on the same page when you implement or are trying to implement a new company culture or a change in the culture?
Well, certainly, it has to do with communication. I think it depends on the size of your company. Making a cultural shift when you're, a Ford Motor Company is a lot different than making a cultural shift when it's just you and me working together as partners in a business. At the one end, companies spend a tremendous amount of money with formal communication programs and formal meetings and high-level marketing communication pieces focused internally and programs and competition and all kinds of things to implement different aspects of the company culture. Or you can just declare at large companies that, you know what, I think what we're going to do now is I'm going to announce Aloha Fridays. So every Friday you're encouraged to wear shorts and an Hawaiian print shirt or blouse to work. And every Friday at 4 o'clock, we're going to knock off at 4 o'clock, and we're going to go to the break room, and we're going to share, pineapple, coconut, and Mai Tais. That's not a great example, but it's an example of what you could do if you had a smaller company and you wanted to shift your culture to one that was a little more family-oriented and a little more soft in its approach. So I think it's all over the map. I think for small companies, you can do a lot. They can turn on a dime. In big companies, it takes lots and lots of effort. You hire people. In fact, you hire teams of people, and you spend millions of dollars to shift the company culture at very, very large companies. Next. Hope that was helpful.
That's actually, I laughed in the middle. That was funny, actually, because I could actually see that when I was looking at, I was thinking about the two distinctions between Zappos and then General Electric. I actually went to General Electric and had 7 different interviews for one job in Erie, and they had, what happened finally, though, was that they walked me through the area that, should I have taken that job or they had hired me, whichever way it goes, I would have had to sit with gray walls around me and no windows in a cubicle every day that I worked. And I thought, wow. So there's a real big distinction between Zappos and their culture and GE and their culture. And I'm not saying either one is right or wrong.
Right.
It is interesting how distinctly different they are, right?
And I'm really glad you brought that up, because I could have put a whole slide in here on your facilities as an aspect of your company culture. Whether you have windows or it's just gray walls, and whether you allow people to decorate their offices and their cubicles or not, and the company office environment is a huge part of the company culture.
Yeah, you're right about that. They aren't even allowed to talk in GE. Like, we walked up 3 flights of stairs and passed probably 10 people, and none of them said hello. Like, that's not okay in that culture.
Wow.
So and I'm not saying that's wrong. It's just they're so focused. They're so very focused on what they're doing. It is their culture, and I realize that my loving sunshine, kind of needing windows and water and things like that, would not work well. So the next question is, how would you suggest helping to correct an employee that's not living up to the company culture? Like, I really love your UCR/UCD. That was really cool. I love that. Can you add any tips for a leader that is trying to help someone that is already an employee that's trying to they want to correct them. They don't want to lose them. Can you add anything to that? Because you did a good job on it, but I think there might be some other things you could add.
I will brainstorm here for a second, because I've seen a lot of culture trying to shift the company culture a little bit as one person at a time can be really, really valuable. You know, if you really value the person and you want them to work on them, you can hire the coach for them. You can say that I'm going to get you a professional coach or an executive coach to work on this issue with you. And you're going to meet every week for the next 12 weeks, and then we're going to check in and see whether or not, you know, you were able to shift your attitudes and your actions to be more consistent with our company culture. You can send them to some sort of a training program. You know, we're going to send you to customer service school, for example, and get them to do that. But and generally speaking, I think you make an investment in the person if you really want them to keep along, and you give them a reason to believe that it's okay for them to shift and a good idea for them to shift. Because people are not going to change unless they feel safe in changing, unless they feel in some way that it adds to their self-esteem and adds to their self-image from having made the change versus not making the change. So that's a general rule that I have, is that people will only change if they feel safe in making the change, and they're only going to change if they feel that it's in their best interest to make the change. So if you show an investment in somebody in terms of a coach or a mentor, or in terms of a training program, or in terms of just saying, hey, let's come back every week. I want to schedule a half-hour meeting with you every week, and I want to check in with you on this particular subject and see what's coming up for you, and if there's anything that we can do to help you make this shift. If you invest in the employee, then I think that can be a pretty good thing. I would note that, by the way, that there's some aspects of company culture that you don't make those type of investments. If somebody's not paying attention to company guidelines with regards to alcohol and drug abuse policies, or sexual harassment, or diversity policies, or abuse policies, those are grounds for termination on day one, on first occurrence. You know, no tolerance, we don't accept that. They can be grounds for termination. You cut people some slack as much as you possibly can, especially as long as they're not hurting other people. But anything that involves breaking the law, and anything that involves hurting other people, I'm not a real big fan of second chances, except I would say with regards to addiction problems. If somebody's got an addiction to something and you notice that and it's starting to affect their behavior, I think you give somebody a second chance on that, but not necessarily a third one. So that's my quick answer to that off the top of my head. And I think it's 12:56. I think we got time for one more question, Kim, if you have one. Are you there?
Okay, good. I'm sorry. I was trying to unmute myself. Paul, you have done a fabulous job in this area. I am particularly interested in the corporate culture. I've experienced different corporate cultures, and I think you've done a really good job of going over what that looks like. And I don't see any more questions right now. And I think that's because you've done a great job of bringing up all the things. I can tell you that your outline, what you have covered today, seems very thorough, and I enjoyed it myself. I was listening to it for myself and starting, working with my own company and saying, hey, these are things I really want to know, because my ideal company is I want to sit on a beanbag chair and have my laptop in front of me, and I just want to work and do my thing and get on Skype, and that's how I talk to people. But that doesn't work everywhere, So it's interesting. That I love the way you talk about this. And if you want to impart any more, bits of wisdom, this is a good time.
No, I thank you. I'll encourage people to do their homework, download the worksheet that'll be up probably by close of business tomorrow, and think about your company culture. The first of the year is a really good time to implement new policies and practices. Think about seeing me at the forum if you're going there a week from yesterday. I'll be there the entire week. Get an opportunity to teach a couple of classes on business plans and sit on a panel on strategic planning. And we've got some new programs coming up after the first of the year, especially the 2014 Annual Action Plan program. I encourage you to think about that. Defining part of your company culture can be a big part of your 2014 plan for your business. So with that, I'll sign off, and thank you very much for attending. I look forward to seeing you next week on our next office hours, where we'll talk about joint ventures and managing your joint venture relationships. This is Paul Hoyt saying goodbye and wishing you a most marvelous and prosperous day. Goodbye.